We now go live to London to talk to Marcus Papadopoulos, publisher and editor of Politics First. Mr. Papadopoulos, thank you so much for being with us and giving us your time. So the Kremlin has said that the assassination of Russia's top envoy in Turkey is a serious blow to Ankare's prestige. Do you think that it's also a serious blow to reconciliation efforts by Russia and Turkey?
Well, can I first of all express my condolences to the family of Ambassador Karlov. His murder was a despicable, monstrous one, carried out by a despicable, monstrous individual. And the assassin really reflects perfectly the sort of people who the Syrian military and the Russian military are fighting every hour of every day in the week. And we really, in the West, we really should be grateful to what the Syrian military and what the Russian military are doing. Because, as I said, the assassin of Ambassador Karlov represents the people who the Russian and Syrian militaries are fighting. But I certainly do think it's a damage to Turkey's relations. Though, of course, you know, they could be healed. Russia does have a lot of leverage over Turkey. Let's not forget that this year, President Erdogan was grovelling for forgiveness from President Putin. So that really demonstrates that Russia has the upper hand over Turkey when it comes to Syria. But having said that, I think that the Russian government, and undoubtedly they will be, need to be cautious with Erdogan, because of course Erdogan is an Islamist, and Erdogan has played a crucially important role in fomenting the conflict in Syria. Because if Erdogan had not have turned Turkey into a vast training camp for Islamist fighters and jihadists going into Syria, if he had not helped arm them to the teeth, if he had not bought ISIS oil, then there's no question about it that the conflict we see in Syria today simply just would not be in existence. So that said, it's very, very important that the Russian government continue to hold its leverage over Erdogan, and only time will tell to see exactly what happens in regard to Turkey's policy in Syria.
Having mentioned Syria, Mr. Papadopoulos, how do you think the assassination of the Russian diplomat in Turkey is going to affect the war in Syria, given the fact that Russia has been a key player in what's been going on and in the efforts to bring about peace there, to fight the terrorists and to end the ongoing conflict in Syria?
Well, Ambassador Karlov's death will simply spur the Russian government even more on to ensuring that all the different terrorist groups in Syria, from ISIS to al-Nusra to the so-called Free Syrian Army, are defeated. There's no question about it. Russia entered the conflict in Syria last year with the objective of defeating Islamist terrorism, which is not just a threat to Syria, not just a threat to the Middle East, but also a threat to Russia and also to Europe. And Russia, the Ministry of Defense in Russia released figures this week to show just how much damage the Russian military have inflicted on the terrorists in Syria. And the loathsome murder of Ambassador Karlov, as I said, will simply spur the Russians on even more to ensuring that the Islamist terrorist groups in Syria are defeated. And I sincerely hope that Erdogan will start to reflect seriously on his policy towards Syria and understand that the Syrian government will not be overthrown, because that's not what the Syrian people want. And also with the Russian military now in Syria, that is not going to happen. And ultimately, the Turkish authorities are responsible for the death of Ambassador Karlov, because the Turkish government is responsible for the security of all diplomats on Turkish soil, and they failed. They failed to protect him. Now that will give the Russian government even more leverage over the Turkish government, and that can only be a good thing in the context of Syria.
Okay, Marcus Papadopoulos, publisher and editor of Politics First, joining us live from London. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.